towards our missions projects. We thank God that we're able to participate in these. And, uh, uh, I think when we get to heaven, what we think maybe was insignificant may turn out to be a big deal. And what we do here at this church to kind of keep what we can, the lights shining. Didn't y'all enjoy that? I want to mention that I failed to put Billy Forbes on the prayer list. Billy's got surgery coming up on Monday, so I want to remember Billy and have a quick recovery from that. So let's stand up and turn around and greet each other.
Hey, bro. That's right.
Yeah, and then there'll be another one in dinner in June. if I could get you to open your Bibles to Jeremiah chapter 10. I want to mention to you that I also failed to put Shannon Henderson on the prayer list. I just read a text by her, and everything's doing good. She's not, things are progressing, and she's recovering from her surgery, hip surgery, but they're having to keep an eye on her heart. Shannon's had heart trouble for years, and so they're keeping an eye on it. So we want to remember to put her in on your weekly prayer list too. But we're looking at the book of Jeremiah. We're going to look at the verses 17 through 25. We've looked at 17, but we want to include it in 18 and 19 as we move forward. And then we've got some areas we're going to turn in our Bible. First thing, look at chapter number 11 and verse number 14, and you'll find, we had a prayer meeting tonight. We have prayer requests, but I want you to see something about the nature of God. Verse number 14 of chapter number 11. He said, "Therefore pray not for this people, neither lift up a cry or prayer for them. For I will not hear them in the time of trouble, in the time that they cry unto me for their trouble." Now, let that sink in. God told Jeremiah there came a point that he said, don't even pray for them. Now, that would not fit in the theology of most folks today. Most folks, if you told them that God said, there came a point where God said, don't even pray for those people, they'd say, oh, you shouldn't talk like that. You shouldn't say that. And they'd say, God would never do that. Well, he did with this bunch. And remember, the Old Testament, as I said many times, generally is God revealing how he deals with nations. The New Testament is God revealing how he deals with individuals. So if you want to get a real understanding of where the world and its nations stand with God and how God says he expects from them, or what happens if they reject him. If you recall, the Bible tells us all the nations that forget God will be turned into hell. That's Old Testament. Here's another one. Righteous exalteth the nation. That's Old Testament. And so you'll find that if you want to get a worldview, a biblical worldview, you'll accept the plan of God in these individual nations' life. Now, with that in mind, back in chapter number 10, these people were warned, and we've gone over that. They've refused, and we've gone over that. Now, the beginning of this passage, we're looking at about 597 BC. Nebuchadnezzar had already begun to lay siege to the city. Do you realize that Nebuchadnezzar came in 10 years before he destroyed the city? And he came in, he put a siege on Jerusalem. He made them acquiesce. They surrendered. He carried out many of the royalty, many of their leaders and their governors, and took them back to Babylon. Jeremiah continued to preach repentance. 10 years, they still, even after that, they said, we're not interested. Of course, in 586 BC, he came and he burnt the city to the ground and deported its inhabitants. Only ones that were left there were the homeless. He left the homeless out there in what was charred remains. And it remained charred for 70 years. That once great city. So when you look at the passages right now before us, you're seeing a culmination of 20 years of preaching and 10 years of already being warned through effect and action, and yet the people were still just like they always were. They didn't want to hear God. Now, remember, they would say, the temple, the temple, the temple. They bragged about their, they still went to the temple, they still went through the ceremonial things, but their heart was far from God. It didn't affect their everyday living, is what I'm saying. They were temple worshipers, ceremonial doers, but they went on about their business, like so many Christians do in America and worldwide, probably. Show up to the early service so we can get it out of the way. And as soon as that last amen, go grab your stuff, go to your church's restroom, change your clothes, and head out to the beach. Make sure you got ice in your beer cooler. Use the church fellowship hall ice for your beer cooler. I mean, I'm telling you, that happens all over this country on a weekly basis. It does. I heard this week on a talk show, a local talk show, where they're having this big fiesta downtown, which, it's nice. They got all kind of stuff, but they got a local church involved in it heavily, and innocently by the ones who were telling about the festival, they named the beer and drink truck that had been. And we're not just talking about beer; we're talking about liquor, mixed drinks, martinis, and all that. It's going to be down there for Family Day, and one of the local churches has got in there and become a big help. I'm thinking, and you know what? Everybody's fine with it. That's the odd thing. It hadn't been that long ago where people used to go to church regularly and the preacher preached on alcohol and drugs. Get right with God. Now, it's included in the church fellowships. I still look back 45 years ago at the first church I pastored, when the guy came up in the neighborhood and he had his cooler. We were having a family fun day out in the back of the church, and he came up with his cooler and he said, "Hey, y'all mind if we come?" It's just a neighbor. I'd never seen him before. And he says, "I got the watermelon and the beer right here." And he set the cooler down. And I said, hey, I said, "Look, we'll take the watermelon, but leave your beer." And thank God the guy got saved. I still communicate with the fella, and I won't say he's normal, but I communicate with him. But he's a good guy. But here, the Bible tells us in verse number 17, "Gather up thy wares out of the land." God is warning them, "O inhabitant of the fortress." So they thought they were protected. But he said, you need to get your material goods, whatever you want to gather up. You might as well get them, because why? "For thus saith the Lord, behold, I will sling out the inhabitants of the land at this once." He likened them to a rock being slung from a slingshot. That's how fast the Lord was going to get them out. And he goes, "And will distress them." This is Israel. This is Judah. "And will distress them, that they may find it so." In other words, that you'll figure it out. I've been warning them. I've sent my prophets. They've turned away from my prophets. They've killed my prophets. They've rejected my prophets. They've thrown my prophets in jail. I've been telling them for years and years and years, if you don't get right, the hammer's going to fall. And so, time's run out. There is a time where it runs out on a nation. Sin is a reproach to any people. So I look and say, well, when is it running out on America? Has it already? Are we in that 10-year window between the first Nebuchadnezzar attack and the complete destruction of that which we know? Now, a fella came out recently and wrote a book on the end of all things. And he's, I don't know that he's a Christian, but he didn't write it from a Christian point of view. He wrote it from a historical point of view. And he's gone in and he looked at the major civilizations down through history. The Aztecs, the Mayans, the Thebans, there was a couple others, but and what he did, he showed how at one time a great civilization, the hammer dropped on it quickly. And in every case, the people thought it was not possible for their culture and society to fail. Every one of them. In fact, as Alexander the Great was coming to the great Theban culture, tremendous fortified walls and cities, and had it all. They had it all. Great commercial districts. As he was coming, and he told them, I'm fixing to destroy you. They said, other people have said that. And they sat in there till it was too late. And when he came in, he took everything. There was no more culture. There was no more language. There was no more arts or music. There was no civilization left. He killed them by the thousands, and what wasn't dead, he took them away into slavery. And not only did he do that there, but even when the Mayans, the Mayans had this great, they're still finding these great so-called temples in the jungles of Central America. Within the last 3 or 4 months, they've discovered places they didn't know exist, the overgrowth. And they fell. They thought they were such powerful people and wealthy people that it was impossible for them to fall. They all thought this. And this fella has gone through and he has taken tremendous historical literature and shown the attitude of the people who fell. And their attitude's just like the Israelites, the Judaites here. They thought, look, we have been around for hundreds of years, and we have our military, we have a mighty military. We are the wealthy center of the world. We have our culture. We lead the world in language and arts. We're the place everybody wants to come. Every one of them had that attitude. And every one of them's gone. The Romans, same thing. But finally they ran out. And nobody talks about the Roman Empire as far as it was in its height now. It's simply somebody we hear about now, but we don't fear the Roman Empire. It's gone. It was around for about 450 years. So where'd it go? Well, they all thought, like these Israelites, they were going, the temple, while they were serving and worshiping these other gods. And God said, okay, I've come to the end. I'm going to sling them out like a sling. I'm going to cast them out. And he said, and Jeremiah says in verse 19, woe is me, for my hurt. My wound is grievous. But I said, truly, this is a grief, and I must bear it. Now, here's the guy I've been preaching to him. He's been preaching you're going to be destroyed. But now when he sees it on before him, he goes, hey, I'm hurt over this thing. He wasn't for He preached hard against them, but he wasn't because he didn't care about them. He was personally grieved. My tabernacle is spoiled, and all my cords are broken. That's what you tie your tent up with, cords. And my children are all gone forth of me. Those are the ones he thought he was caretaker of. They are not. There is none to stretch forth my tent anymore and to set up my curtains. I don't have any help from the community. They're all gone. This is a near vision of what was about to happen. He saw it right before him. And then he goes, for the pastors are become brutish. And we looked at that word last week. It's stupid. And have not sought the Lord. Therefore they shall not prosper, and all their flocks shall be scattered. Now, when they use the word pastors here, we use it in a New Testament sense as being the role of the man there that God ministers to in the flock. But here it included all those who looked after the people, included the governor, including the prime minister, including the local leaders, all of those. He said that nobody's got a clue. It included the priest, and it included the Levite. They all are ignorant and naive. And he goes, and God said, I'm not going to bless you anymore. Behold, the noise of the brute is come. That's the report. That's one of the words, the archaic words in English that you hear about. They claim there are hundreds of them. There are not hundreds of them. But there's one every now and then that you have to actually look up. But that word bruit is a report. Behold, the noise of the bruit is come, and a great commotion out of the north country. That's the word's out, he said, that Nebuchadnezzar is on the way to make the cities of Judah desolate and a den of dragons. Those are, I believe, devilish and satanic beings that appear as men. O Lord, I know that the way of man is not in himself. He can't figure it out. It is not in man that walketh to direct his steps. Man doesn't have the sense to know how to go without God's guidance. Man, if you leave God out of it, man hasn't got a clue. Now, you can see that in our culture. Kick God out of the schools in the name of tolerance. That's man's idea. Okay, now the schools are dangerous. The little darlings will kill you and kill each other. Man thought he had a great idea. Now they think they got a great idea with this transgenderism. I read the other day or today that there was I believe it's a swimmer, and of course we know of the one, but another swimmer who now has won all 3 swimming meets he's been in, parading around as a sheep. And there was another guy who claims he's a girl that now has won 4 or 5 track events in a time would have been the last place in a man's world, but he's beating all the women, and he parades around as a woman. You see, they're going to destroy the women's sports while they're claiming they're trying to give deference and uphold the woman. Man listen, when you leave man to himself, he makes the biggest mess out of stuff. It gets crazy, you know. I mean, look at our medical world today. God's out, man's in, and now man came up with the technology, but the technology is not for medicine, the technology is to make money. So you go get a CAT scan or an x-ray and you get the bill out and you say, how in the world did it cost $10,000? What did they do that cost $10,000? Well, man fixed all that up. That's man's formula. I mean, it gets bizarre. let's just say that nuclear piece of equipment cost $250,000. Well, at $20,000 a clip, it won't take but 10 people to pay for it. We know hundreds have been through that piece of equipment. Did it drop the price? Nope. Keeps going up. Every time I go get anything and I get the bill, what? Now, I know you say, well, Medicare pays for it. Well, that's man's got it all. His formula now has got where I take some insulin. I think I pay $45, but I get the bill from Medicare. They pay $1,800 a month. For that? You telling me that's worth $1,800? I mean, they've been making the same stuff for 40 years. How's that worth $1,800? That's man's system. He devised it. And so this shows you, and Jeremiah says, it's not in man to order his steps. He doesn't have enough sense to walk around away from God. So he said, oh Lord, correct me. Jeremiah said, I need to be whipped just like the rest of them, but with judgment. He said, I deserve a whipping, but I'm asking you to do it with discernment, judgment. Look the situation over, because he said, not in thine anger. See, Jeremiah had what we call the fear of the Lord. See, he'd rather be disciplined as a child of God than to be destroyed in the anger of God. And so he begged God, he said, hey, I'm not saying I deserve to be let off the hook. But he says, when you correct me, do it. Would you do it not in your anger? Remember what the New Testament says for those who have rejected Christ? It says, and the wrath of God abideth on them. Wrath is anger. Judgment and correction is chastisement. Big deal. It's a big deal when, your parent, as you were raised, disciplined you. You go stick your fork over there in that 120 volt. Every kid has to try that out at least once, Stick that fork in there. And you get spanked. They're not doing it because they're mad at you for sticking the fork in there. They're doing it because they know if you try to do that very often, it's going to fry you. But now, the principal, he's not trying to correct you. You get in trouble at school, they used to call you to the principal's office, and he'd get that paddle out. He wasn't saying, I just want you boys to understand I love you. He never